welcome back to another edition of AGI, Advance, Grow, and Innovate with AI. Your host, Jason Padgett here. Feel like I've kind of come of age today because I have another podcaster on here. This guy has a pretty big podcast, Leveraging AI. I've been listening to it since ChatGPT launched, and I fell in love with the whole AI scene back in 2022. It's on my list of podcasts I listen to weekly. I know he's gone way down the rabbit hole with Nano Banana. But Isar, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll dive into AI.
Sure. Thank you for having me, first of all. This is really great. I love being on like AI podcasts. Usually I'm just on business podcasts and stuff like that. So great to be here. My background, about 1,000 years ago, I was an F-16 pilot. And after that, I was an instructor at the Air Force Academy, teaching young cadets how to fly, and then later on flying more advanced airplanes. And then I joined a small tech startup. That's what brought me to the US. So I moved here with a tech startup. You know, you wear a lot of hats in a small startup. I was initially in project management, and after that in marketing, and after that running the sales and marketing departments. And I was there for about 11 years, I think. When I left that company, I did an executive MBA, led my own startup I was trying to reinvent affiliate marketing. It was an awesome idea. I still think it's an awesome idea. I just couldn't make it work. And during that time, my main investor, who was the founder and CEO of the largest wholesale travel company in the US, came to me and said, "Hey, listen, you understand all this e-commerce stuff. We only do B2B wholesale. Do you want to start our B2C arm?" And I told him, "Well, you're paying me pretty big checks to do the thing that I'm doing." He's like, "You're smart enough. You can do both." And so I was not smart enough, but I did run both for 3 years, I believe. And in those 3 years, the e-commerce travel platform took off. We built an incredible white label e-commerce travel platform, the best that was in the world back then. And I always like to half joke that was the first nail in the coffin of my startup is me trying to run both things at the same time. We've grown that e-commerce platform to $100 million in like 6 years or so.
Wow.
And then the bigger business, the bigger company that was a part of got sold, went through a large international merger. After a year and a half of interesting times, I got everything that I wanted on paper. So I got, through a merger, like there's at least three of everything. There were three companies in that merger. We had 4 e-commerce platforms. So I was selected to lead the unified team. My team survived as the leading of everything, et cetera, et cetera. So I had a fancy title and a lot of people to manage and a really big budget, and I hated every second of it. I'm a startup kind of guy, and I cannot do corporate. And so after about 2 years later, I hired a replacement, and I left that company. And that's when I got to podcasting. I was bored because I was used to running software companies, and now I had nothing to run. And I missed talking to business people, and I listened to a lot of podcasts and said, "Ooh, these podcasters gets to talk to a lot of interesting business people. Why won't I start a podcast?" I really had no other reason other than the fact that I was missing the business conversation. That led me afterwards to start a business that helped businesses grow, leveraging podcasting and live talk shows online. And I sold my half of that business to my business partner at the end of 2022, so October of 2022, thinking what I want to do when I grow up. And then ChatGPT came out. And as a super geek that spent 20 years running software companies and also being an investor in a few software companies and on boards and part of a VC and stuff like that, I very quickly started getting phone calls of people, "Hey, you playing with this ChatGPT thing? Can you tell me what it does?" And so one thing led to the other, and very organically, I started consulting to companies. One of the businesses I invested in 2 years before that, and I was mentoring the CEO on a weekly basis, was an online cohort training platform. Mm-hmm. So they connected, basically a marketplace that connected people with knowledge to people with needs, and build these cohorts for live, well, not live, but live on Zoom kind of training. Sure. On their platform. And on January of 23, I told the CEO, I said, "Listen, you must have an AI course." He said, "Yeah, I agree with you. This thing is like everybody started talking about this. do you know anybody that can be the instructor? And I said, yeah, I'll be your instructor. And he started laughing. He's like, you were one of my first investors. You run companies. You want to be an instructor? I'm like, yeah, I love instructing. I love it. And he's like, okay, I trust you. You're it. So in April, we've launched the AI Business Transformation course, April of 23. And I've taught at least one course a month since, in many months, more than one. And so most of the courses are private. So I teach companies courses and workshops. But then every now and then when I have the bandwidth, I open a public course and then anybody can sign up. But yeah, I've been doing AI education, implementation, consulting for the last 2.5 years. So that's, in a nutshell, who I am and what I've done in the last 20 plus years.
That's awesome. First off, thank you for your service. Simplify. I was I call this my Navy camouflage. I was a United States Marine reservist at one point in time. I'm a little heavy set for that now, but I loved the Marine Corps, and I wanted to switch from reserves to active duty, but it was between the two Gulf conflicts, and I had already signed up for the reserves, and the Marine Corps doesn't like to grow when it doesn't need to, so I didn't end up getting that chance. But a lot of similarities. I mean, about 10 years ago, I shifted from the restaurant industry that I've been in for 20 years to the space of behavioral health and community paramedicine, and I helped develop a program there for peer-based recovery support for people who struggle with mental health and addictions problems. I'm in recovery myself, and then eventually, like, they saw my talent and shifted me to marketing. I did marketing for a while. I left and went to the Salvation Army. I thought, well, I never finished college. Like, maybe if I'm a development director or fundraiser, I could actually make some money in life one of these days, because EMS is not a real it's not a real money garnishing living, although it's a wonderful job. And so I was at the Salvation Army in Lafayette, Indiana, when ChatGPT hit, and I was like, I'd always loved writing. I'd always hated math. I was like, oh, bullshit. Like, let me see what this thing can do. And I was actually, even 3.5, I was really surprised. And I immediately saw, like, wow, this could take a lot of lift off for people who are, like, wearing multiple hats in a nonprofit. This can write a lot of your copyright. It does take some tone, voice, and style prompting, right? Even to this day, you can't just really use the out of the box. If I ever figure out how to get rid of M dashes, I will say AGI has been reached. That's my marker, because M dashes are everywhere. But the more and more I explored it, the more and more I started to realize, like, this does offset my math deficits and data analytics deficits, or at least it can explain it to me patiently, like I'm 6 years old, right? So that was awesome. But then I also realized, like, whatever you're really good at, you will be really, really good at with AI, right? So, like, my boss, who's an artist, like a painting artist, he can get 10 times better images out of an image generator. Even back when DALL-E was making, like, robot-looking future, I hated those images, but he would get in there and type something up, and it would damn near paint a Picasso. And I'm like, what did you do, man? Like, how are you doing that? So it's an awesome space, and it's become a huge passion of mine. I do some educating. Most of it's been for free. I will tell you, outside of enterprise in the state of Indiana, we do not see a lot of adoption in the small to medium-sized business and nonprofit area yet. I don't know what Florida looks like. You're out of Orlando, correct?
Yes.
What does that look like in your landscape?
I think generally in the U.S., the last quarter, maybe two, people are finally waking up.
Yes.
And so... But again, I start every lecture and every workshop that I do, which is very frequent, usually more than one a week, with the same question of, in the next 4 buckets, where are you? Bucket number 1, I'm a total beginner. Like, I may have played with ChatGPT, I wrote a prompt or two trying to respond to an email, but that's about it. Level number 2 is I started using it, I'm using it regularly, for many different things, but I don't have clear structured systems and processes for my business using AI. Bucket number 3 is I have several different structured business processes that AI is fully integrated into. And bucket number 4, I am an expert, like I can teach the course, right? To this day, and again, I do this every week, 80% at least of the people in the room are either in bucket 1 or bucket 2. And I do this in large corporations, I do this in small and medium businesses, I do this for solopreneurs and anything in between. And so I think that's kind of where we are. I think there's definitely people running faster and running forward and adopting and investing time and money and resources. But the vast majority are still in very early stages of adoption.
And to speak to that, two things I don't think a lot of them realize, and I'd love your feedback on this. One is just how much you have to have your processes mapped out to leverage AI. And a lot of businesses don't have their processes mapped out. I mean, I even go through and do personal time studies myself every once in a while where I just record my whole day. I mean, I wear an ambient listening device anyway, we'll get into that, but where I like literally record my whole day and say exactly what I'm doing all the way along, and then feed that into like Notebook LM and then into a custom GPT and say like, okay, what am I missing? What could I automate? What could I get rid of here? So the process is one thing, but the context I think is a whole different ballgame. And my guess is 2026, the big combative conversation will be around ambient listening devices, because you cannot have an executive assistant that knows like half of your conversations and doesn't have access to your calendar and doesn't understand the whole plan. But then you tell people that and you're like, so you're going to have to record everything, learn how to keep it secure, make some rules around that in your business. They're like, what? Hell no, Big Brother's not watching us the whole time we're working. I'm like, well, I got news for you. If you really want to leverage AI, that's probably going to have to be the case. Do you agree, disagree, have different perspective on that?
In general, I agree. And the reason I agree is twofold. One is it's a mindset shift, right? It's like people are like, oh my God, you will let OpenAI have all your data in their cloud computers? I'm like, you have all your data on either Google or Amazon or Oracle or Microsoft already. Like the data is not on your computer or in your office. It's in the cloud somewhere. You already trust a third-party provider with your data for at least a decade or about a decade, depending on the company. And so you're like, oh no, that's really different. I'm like, how is it different? If they do everything they can to keep your data protected and legally they're bound not to use your data for anything other than stuff you agreed to, then there's no difference between that and hosting your data on Microsoft or Oracle or whatever. Now, it's not completely true. There is significantly more cybersecurity risk with AI than there is with traditional storage. That is a given, at least for now. When or if it's going away, nobody really knows. But from the conceptual perspective, it's the same kind of custom. So that's reason number one. Like, I don't really see a big difference. Reason number two, the benefits are immense. I've been using Fathom to record, and again, there's multiple other tools. I'm not promoting Fathom or anything, but multiple tools that will record every call that you have and transcribe it and analyze it and give you action items and all of that. And it's a game changer. And you combine that with automations that know how to filter the meetings to different kinds of meetings, and then pull just those transcriptions to do further, more detailed analysis of these and give you action items and insights and proposals and whatever you need out of those. And then you understand that you can do a lot more stuff with the data that you have, and a lot faster and better. So you don't have to do it, but your competitors will. And then if you don't do it and your competitors will, it just changes your overall business cost or cost structure. So let's say now your competitors can do things 15% cheaper. They can price everything 10% cheaper than you and still make 5% more money. Now, if the overall margin is 20%, that is very significant. And so it becomes healthy or not, you want to do this or not, risky or not, scary or not. It is starting to become a necessity if you want to stay competitive. And it doesn't matter what the size of your business is.
I agree. I would almost say that also, I've seen a lot of offers out there for people who will give you like the instructions and what knowledge to upload for an executive assistant custom GPT, right? And I have one myself, but again, if you're only given it half of the context of your work, it could make some really wrong decisions based on not having the full story. To me, it's like back in the day, you had a secretary who sat in the corner of the office who knew what you told her. Like I never did, right? I'm damn near that old, but not quite. But and she would type things up, or he would type things up, and now you have like an executive assistant role, and the executive assistant like follows the CEO around. It has access to all of the CEO's email and calendar and all that, right, can almost be a shadow of the CEO. To me, that's where the space for an AI executive assistant is. If you try to treat it like a secretary, you're going to get some bad outcomes, and then probably blame it on hallucinations. But really, it's the whole bad input, bad output.
Yeah, I think in addition, beyond the assistant, not assistant, if you're really scared or regulated or whatever, you can stay within the universe you're in. So if you're the Microsoft universe, you can go with Copilot, and then your data stays within the Microsoft universe and it doesn't go anywhere. And if you're in the Google universe, you can use Gemini and that's it, and that stays in the Google universe. And you already trust these companies with everything that you have. And so it doesn't really matter whether you're going to add AI on top of it or not. By the way, they're running a lot of AI in the background anyway. Like even if you're not using the benefits of it, they're doing it for managing your files, managing storage, giving you context, allowing you to do search. Like if you're going to your Google Drive and you're searching for a file, well, guess what? An AI went through your files before to categorize all your files and get all the keywords and know what the document is about. That happened way before you had access to an AI kind of like prompt line. And so it's not that these concepts are new, it's just that we have access to them right now. And these companies that we trust with our data before AI should get our trust with AI because it's the same company and they're still using AI just like they did before.
I would agree. And I would say Microsoft must have been listening because my boss and I were having a conversation about 2 weeks ago. And I was like, listen, we should just consider, I know it's not an easy move, but we should consider moving to the HIPAA compliant paid Google ecosystem because Google is so far ahead. Like we paid for Copilot for he and I and our head tech IT guy. And for the last year, we've been like, it won't do anything at all. It sucks. And finally, I think they must have leaned on OpenAI enough to get access to like current ChatGPT because now you can create custom GPTs. It works better, not best, but it works better than it has within the last couple of weeks.
I agree with you. I think in general, Copilot is subpar. I think a lot of it has nothing to do with their relationship with OpenAI or not. I think it has to do with their rollout, security, customization, integration to their stuff. So I think they had access to the top models all the time. It's just the way they implemented them crippled them dramatically. So stuff that you could easily do in ChatGPT just did not work in Copilot. They are getting better. They are still behind, but if you want to stay within one universe and not share your data with anybody else, then that's fine. That's your option.
And I think that's a fair assessment. I would say they're at least waded deep enough into the waters to make it through all this. I'm not sure Apple has. I am skeptical as to whether or not Apple will be a blockbuster and we'll look back. We thought was going to rule the cell phone world forever. Like they're they're like a relic now because they've really screwed up on their intelligence.
100%.
Now the flip side, and you've been playing with Nano Banana. I have not yet. I did share it. I have a stepbrother who actually lives in northern Indiana, and like 3 weeks ago, he was asking me if I could help him redesign a property that he wanted to change with AI because he was paying a ton of money for somebody he didn't like to do the redesigns. And I introduced him to Google AI Studio and to ChatGPT, and he was having a hit or miss with it. And then Nano Banana launched, and he said it's awesome, is it not?
It's incredible. It is mind-blowing how some things that were kept to professionals with professional tools, so graphic designers with Photoshop, you can do with a single sentence without having any skills, experience, or anything. It's mind-blowing.
I see Notebook LM has been the one that has actually rocked my world because I love being able to, like, we will record all of our leadership meetings that we have every week, and I'll just keep a quarterly file in a paid Google account in Notebook LM, right? And I can interface with that and ask it questions. Now it'll generate videos. Like the little podcast thing was cute for a minute. It got old fast, but now we're actually leveraging it to generate like 8-minute training videos that we can just send out in teams to the rest of our company. It takes zero time. I mean, you can just go do something else while it's creating it, right? And it's pretty good. It's all animated, but it's not bad. I just unlocks like that, and the fact that this is one more thing I'll throw out there is I don't think that the general public understands that if you use RAG, retrieval augmented generation, strictly rather than a predictive large language model, you won't get hallucinations. So
You will reduce them dramatically. Let's put it
okay,
this way. It doesn't mean that you won't get them. The biggest benefit is not just percentage of hallucinations, it's just the depth of the content. None of these models have deep expertise in specific domain. So they are the jack of all trades, but the master of none. Now they're getting better in more and more topics. And now, you have Sam Altman saying they're in PhD level in all these different things. Maybe yes, maybe not. But even if they are in a PhD level, they still don't know your company. They still don't know your niche. They still don't know your industry. They still don't know your clients. They still don't know your operations. They still don't know your processes. They don't know any of that. If you give them that information, then the answers you're going to get are a lot more specific to you, your niche, your operations, your company, your coworkers, and so on. And so, yes, there's a huge benefit if you give it the right context versus if you...
Have you heard the rumors that that's what Mir Murati's company is probably going to focus on, is fine-tuning models?
I think they can focus on whatever they want at this point. It's these kind of people like,
Because
I
raised
left.
$3 billion.
I was an executive in OpenAI, so anybody who's willing to give me $2 billion, yes, I'll give you. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And then you figure out what that's going to be afterwards, because now you have $2 billion.
Yeah, it is an interesting landscape. I didn't pay that much attention to VC world before, but I know just from listening, like, this is unheard of that people would raise the money Zuckerberg spent on software engineers not too long ago. AI software engineers was just crazy, and then to turn around and like get in trouble because they don't have safeguards anybody would ethically agree with in Facebook. I don't know. I try not to pay. I'll be honest. The only thing I pay much attention to, I think it's hilarious to watch Sam and Elon go back and forth. So I do pay a little bit of attention to that on X. But I do that does bring up, like, you and I listen to this. We pay attention to it. Like, people who are really starting to explore it are paying attention to it. But if you look at what the general public has access to as far as information around what's going on in AI, sometimes it's understandable why they're skeptical or haven't really dove in yet.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. So my podcast, I'm not, because you mentioned it, there's 2 episodes a week, right? So one episode is a very practical, down to earth. I find the best practitioners over the internet, or if I find a use case that I want to share, then I will share it. But it's usually other people, and they will share exactly how they're doing it. Like, show the magician behind the curtain and the prompts, the process, the tools, like everything. So it's very practical. And that was the only thing I recorded for about a year out of the 2 years of the podcast. And it was very hard for me to stay up to date with everything that was happening. And I got to find a way to stay on top of the news. Like, how do I force myself to consume every piece of information that's coming out? And my approach to that was, I will start recording a second episode in which I'm going to cover the news. And that has to force me to know what's happening because I have to report about it. And that became a very time-consuming investment, but it helps me stay on top of the news, and it brings a lot of value to the listeners. So I do this, but it is very, very hard. And really, I think for the average person who is not, all invested in this field, which is the vast majority of people, most people just have a day job that is not AI related, then the only way to do this is to follow people like you and me who share the news. And, whether you're a newsletter kind of person, sign up for a newsletter or two, or if you're a podcast person, then listen to a podcast that covers whatever is happening, or YouTube or TikTok, like, it doesn't matter. But find somebody who is reliable and consistent and with depth that can provide you this kind of information, and his or her analysis or perspective on things that can definitely help you kind of like stay up to date on what's happening without having to spend a day a week going through all that information.
That's the exact same advice that I give people. And I tell them to start with podcasts, general podcasts on AI, because the problem with YouTube is a lot of what you get there is like Jeffrey Hinton and these guys that are, telling us that Terminator is going to be here in about 2 weeks and we should all run in hot. There's a lot of doomsday stuff on YouTube if you just search AI on YouTube. And in the podcast space, there are a lot. There are actually probably about 5 that I follow that are yours included, that are very good and informative. I was the same way. I started just because I wanted to talk to other people about it and get involved, and then I started a second one because I became so passionate about AI and education. I really feel like that space is where we need to be having some serious conversations. I love that the government just put out this AI.gov, and there's a project that K through 12 students can get involved in at their state level, and then a regional level, and then maybe even go to DC. Regardless of what you think of the politics of, I actually like David Sachs. I love the All In podcast. That's the only long podcast I listen to, because they have Jason. I can't say half their last names, but Jason is extremely left, and then the rest of them are kind of right. They got David, who's in the White House. So that's really kind of where I get my politics anymore. But I do think that getting it out there and getting these kids involved with things, that this is going to change the landscape of education big time. And I can't wait to see how much it disrupts this system that we have, that we set up in the 1920s for factory workers.
I agree with you 100%. I talk about this in the podcast all the time, as you know.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the greatest opportunity our education system ever had.
Yeah.
And also potentially the biggest risk to the education system if they don't embrace it and understand how to leverage it and understand how to benefit from it, not as a system, but for the benefit of the actual students. And I think that's true from K through PhD. And I think the system, being a really rigid system, is going to have to go through some very serious changes in order to adapt, but I don't think there's another option. There are already smaller private schools that are rigged around AI tutoring that is completely personalized and so on, and that's by all means the future. Like, if every student can get the right guidance to he or she's current level, with adaptation to their style of learning, with adaptation to their current immediate level of, I can concentrate right now, or I cannot concentrate right now, and I would like to watch a video, or I would like to play a game, or I would like to read this, or I would like to do some interactive, or like whatever the case may be, is transformative. And then the teachers, instead of being cogs in a really large machine, becomes actual mentors, people who can help students grow as individuals, as people, which they have exactly zero bandwidth to do right now. And so I think everybody wins. I think the teachers are going to be happier. I think we're going to grow a smarter, better, more sophisticated generation. I think it will allow people, kids and adults, to run ahead on the stuff that they can. And like I said, I think everybody wins. There's if you come and visit northern Florida, there's a place called St. Augustine. It's a really beautiful small town on the coast, and it was one of the very first settlements of Europeans in the US. And it has the first school that was built by Europeans in the US. And it's a small wooden shack. And guess what? There's rows of seats and a blackboard in the back. Mm-hmm. And it surprisingly looks exactly like most classrooms today. And yes, today there's a screen instead of a blackboard, and the teacher is using PowerPoint instead of chalk. But other than that, we made very little progress. And it's scary if you think about what happened in the last 150, 170, 200 years. A lot of things changed.
Yes.
And the education system did not change much. And so I really see this as a great, great opportunity. So kudos to you for investing in that field.
Well, I appreciate that. Reid Hoffman has a Possible podcast, which I also like. It's on my other phone. So I have one podcast. I have one that's like information. All the information podcasts are on my one phone. Those are I must listen tos. And then I have, I like to get different perspectives. I'm reading Empire of AI, even though I think Karen Howe is extremely hard on the industry and absolutely hates big tech. But I always like to get from every perspective, and Reid comes more from that, imagine what if everything breaks humanity's way. But he had a woman on there by the name of Mackenzie Price, who's creating just this, private AI run schools where kids spend 2 hours in subjects in the morning. They are in the top 10 percentile across the United States and how well they do on testing. All the teachers are called mentors, not teachers. They don't pay less than $100,000 a year to those people, so they're well paid. And then the rest of the day is spent on like sports and art and dance and like interacting and learning how to work with each other. And I look at that and I'm like, yes, that is beautiful. How do we scale that?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%.
Now, you were just in Israel not too long ago, were you not?
I was for an entire month.
I'm sorry for the things that are going on over there, and I'm sure you have family over there. My heart goes out to you, but it is curious to me, like, what does AI adoption look like in another well-developed country? Is it about the same as it is here? Do they worry about China?
So I think there's less worry about China because I think we're not in the same global domination race. I don't think anybody thinks that the world will use Israeli AI technology, definitely not on the hardware side. As global power. So I think the fear from China is not there. There is, as you probably know, a very developed high-tech scene in Israel with many startups that are extremely successful out of that ecosystem. And so I think there's a like, I guess like in any place, there is the Gauss bell shape kind of like distribution. Do I think more people in Israel know about AI than here? Maybe, just because we have a much higher concentration of employment in the tech industry than here. And people in tech tend to be, well, guess, more techie. So they're more involved, more following that, more connected, less objecting to using technology. And so, yeah, I do think there's probably a higher adoption rate in Israel, but probably not by much. And I think it's skewed not because it's Israel, but because Israel has a high concentration of tech workers, hence the alignment with what's happening in AI.
That makes sense. What's your perspective on China? I think China's killing us on EVs, on robotics, on energy, on a lot of things that I like to hear we're doing just as well on. I do follow some Americans who are really into Chinese tech, and it sounds to me like while they have some problems with their city infrastructures because they spent too much money on that, like on the tech front, that's kind of what the government's behind right now, and they're kind of kicking some butt.
I think it's a mix. I will say a few things. On face value, you're right. They have better robotics than anybody else in the world right now. They're creating some pretty amazing AI infrastructure. I think they're still behind on the AI software side of things. And I think they're still behind on the AI hardware, the actual chips side of things. Can they catch up? Potentially. The only question that I have, and I don't know the answer. I'm gonna leave it as an open question. I'm old enough that I was a part of the Cold War with Russia. And we were scared, terrified from their airplanes and from their technology and from other stuff. And over the years, I had the opportunity to actually participate in exercises flying an F-16 against MiGs and actually sit in the MiGs and see what they are and what they have inside. And in many of these cases, their technology was on paper more advanced. They have stuff in their airplanes that not a single American airplane has. It just doesn't work, or it kind of works, or it kind of works in these particular scenarios. And so I think face value is awesome. Face value needs to be translated into consistent value. In the military side, that could be military value. On the monetary side, it could be financial value. On the business side, it needs to be business value. But you need to use whatever it is that you're developing to consistently deliver value to the audience you're catering to. And I think the jury is still out on that in the US and in China. Yeah. Right? I think it will be very interesting to see how the Chinese economy and how the US economy and how any other Western world economy or AI-enabled economy changes its growth trajectory because of AI. If this happens faster in China than in the US, then yes, they built better system than we did. If it happens the other way around, then we built better systems than they did. I think it's very early to call that. I think it will be very interesting to see how that evolves. China has much bigger problems. Since you mentioned like reading and you're interested in kind of like bigger thinking questions, I highly recommend the book, The End of the World is Just the Beginning.
Okay.
It's a fascinating read, and it talks about kind of like the global geopolitical, financial, trade situation, and with an historical view on how things got us to where we are, and with a potential projection of where we might go. And China has really serious problems, really, really, really serious problems. And yes, it helps when it's not a democratic country and you can kind of like, push things under the rug, and you can make believe with eventually this thing falls apart.
Yeah.
Like when the underlying, the baseline of everything is cracking, it is very hard to build a tower steady. Now, can they figure it out? Maybe. Some of the things will be very hard to figure out. And so, do I think we're currently in a very close race on AI? 100%, not taking anything away from them. Do I think there are some things in AI they're doing better than us? For sure. Can it last and help them overcome the really bigger issues that they have right now? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I could see that. I think really when I look at Asian countries in general, and I'm kind of generalizing, I could be off, but the feeling that I get, the worry that I actually have when it comes to the American mindset versus the Asian mindset is I feel like the majority of Americans are consumers of technology, and a lot of Asian people try to create more with technology than just 30-second TikTok. Then they're done and then we're going to sit down and stream Netflix. Like we're building Italian brain rot using AI on TikTok, and in the meantime, I did see China had a 5K with all these different robots that people have built, from like R2D2 looking things to pretty cool bipeds. Like I worry that minds, if that doesn't shift a little bit and we don't again get into our K through 12 education system, like, hey, these technologies can do a lot more than just create entertainment. They can create. Imagine the possibilities of what they can.
Yeah.
create.
So I'll first of all, I agree with you. Like we have no disagreement here, but going back to kind of like expanding on the point that I said before. In the US, if you want to drive an electric car, there's an 80% chance you drive a Tesla, because what are the options? Electric Ford Mustang, electric F-150, a Kia, there's not too many options. And none of these options is even close to the Tesla in value or capabilities. Or stupidly expensive. Like they are, you can buy something, but it's going to cost you twice as much as buying a Tesla that does more or less the same thing. In the rest of the world, Israel included, Chinese companies rule. I was just in Israel for a month. Every single day, I saw another Chinese brand that I haven't seen in the days before. Forget about a model. Like, What the hell is this thing? Every day. So there are dozens of electrical cars from China that look incredible.
Yeah.
Inside and outside. You're like, I want this car, and I want this car, and I want that
They're
one.
not that expensive.
And they're half the price of a Tesla. The problem is they don't hold value. They have a lot more breakage. It's companies that existed for 2 years. They may go under 2 years from now, and then there's nobody to service your car because they keep on starting all these new companies to build cars because they're giving them incentives and they can compete. So again, you look at the car, oh my God. And then you start talking to people who own the car for 2 years. Oh, this broke and this had to drive back and I had to do that. And it's a brand new car. Why does it have so it's, yes, they're running fast 100%. They're developing incredible things 100%. Can they make it in a way that, going back to what I said before, consistently provides value? Time will tell. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying that's the thing we need to measure and not be excited about they're generating more stuff than we do.
Yeah, that's a very pragmatic approach. So on the hardware front, I'm going to ask you a political question that this has weighed on me. So when they put out the USAI thing a few weeks ago, like about a month ago, right? The whole big thing. And again, the All In podcast did like a 6-hour thing where they had Vance up there, they had Trump, they had Jensen Huang. All right. The one thing that stood out to me that concerned me was listening to President Trump talk about the fact that he wanted to break up NVIDIA when he came in, that he didn't know who they were, and that he was told that he can't. Like, we are too dependent on them. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, how many competitors they have? And they said none. And he goes, well, then we're breaking them up for sure. And they were like, no, you can't. Like, even if you had 5 off spins and Jensen did a half-assed job of running NVIDIA for the next 10 years, no one would catch up with them. We need them. Like, that to me is almost, are we headed towards a political, a global dominance of big companies rather than governments type of dystopian thing like that? That's the first marker I've heard of, especially somebody like Trump who likes to do that kind of stuff, right? Prides and pats himself on the back at doing stuff like that. For him to be able to say, okay, I guess I can't. That's concerning.
So the short answer is yes. I do think we're going to this dystopian environment. I mean, we're already there. We don't have to go anywhere. It's just going to get worse. That's the only difference. Listen, I heard a very, very interesting commentary, and I don't remember the name of the guy, but he basically said that apparently, the mix of complete freedom of speech together with almost complete democracy, when I say almost complete, is like freedom not just for that, but to be able to do a lot more stuff than you can in other countries, together with fierce capitalism, ends up cannibalizing itself. When you get to the point that the strongest companies in the world control the technology we're running on, controls the media, because most of the media today is social media. Like, they get a lot more eyeballs, definitely on the younger generations, than traditional media. So they control that. They control the underlying infrastructure. They control basically the minds of tens of millions of Americans. And the younger you go, the more control and more reach that they have. So, and they have more money. So going back to the capitalism side, so the driver is, how do we make more money? That's the driver. It's not how do we do the right thing for the country, for humanity, it's how to make more money. Because if not, let's say you want to do something else, you will lose your job. That's why you're the CEO of that business. Now, can you sugarcoat it and saying, yes, we're doing this? Yeah. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to deliver growth this quarter over next quarter over next one and so on, you will lose your job, even if you did amazing things for humanity. And so the biggest driver is capitalism. You can say whatever you want to say, and it's getting more and more extreme and more dividing. So the language is becoming more and more dividing. Think about how many kind of like co-partisan stuff have you seen in the last few years. Yeah. Bipartisan stuff is very, very, very rare.
It is.
And it's not just that. Like the way one side talks about the other, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or on the right. It's not like we disagree on this. You are the devil.
Yeah.
You're the devil, and you're going to doom this country, this earth. Like, it doesn't matter, depending what the conversation is. Yeah. That's the conversation.
And when we were kids, it was, we both want to get to the same place. We just completely disagree on how to get there.
Yeah.
So we can be in the middle.
I do think that there is a toxic mix that we're in right now that is not necessarily leading us in a healthy situation. Now, you hear the big leaders of AI, all of them are saying we need to find a way to equally distribute the value that AI is going to generate. And my question is, are you fucking kidding me? I don't know if I can say that word on the podcast, but I just did.
I'll click the box. I think I already
really, I'm like, you are going to take the trillions of dollars you're going to make, and you're going to decide who gets to decide who gets how much money. So it's equally distributed. Do you get to make the same $5,000 that everybody else on the planet once we take out all the profits of your company? Or you get to keep $1 trillion of two and just everybody else gets 5,000. Like, how does that work? And the other thing is people talking about, universal basic income. I'm like, universal basic income is impossible. It's impossible from so many different reasons. But reason number one is that basic income is a very, very different concept to every person that you look at. And for some people, basic income is $3,000 a month. For some, it's $30,000 a month. And for some, it's $300,000 a month. And I know it sounds crazy to people that there's people that would spend $4 million a year to just maintain their living. But there are a lot of people like that in the world. So unless you take them out of their homes, out of their cars, out of where they live, out of their life, then there is no universal basic income because it's not universal anymore. So then who gets to decide? So I don't see this as a real option even. Forget about like an actual thing that can happen.
Man, I had a lot of thoughts. So first off, I'm pretty much a neoliberal. I don't think our form of capitalism is good anymore, but I totally think capitalism works. I just think that we need to redefine what a monopoly is and what we need, and re-identify what we need to break up. So it used to be, if you didn't have a B2B competitor, then you needed to be shook up a little bit, right? I would say now more if you have thought control or an audience that's it's too big, like you probably need to be broken up. Or if you're, if
Yeah, but I don't think that's doable either. Like
I don't know.
I'm trying to just think about it from a practical way. Let's say you break out Facebook. What do you break it to? Like who controls which
You
part?
would break it to Instagram, WhatsApp, and then Facebook.
Perfect, no problem. So now
Facebook
instead
app
of one
itself
company,
would
you
be
have
your
three
spot.
companies, but they're all doing the same exact thing. They're all pushing it in the same exact direction. It's not that one of them is now going to be the opposition and do something else for humanity. They're still going to be driven by greed. And again, don't get me wrong. I'm a very strong capitalist. I'm a huge believer in capitalism. I just think that there is an edge that we're about to fall off
I don't
if you
disagree.
keep on moving in that direction.
But I think so. This goes back to business too. So let me just throw a theory at you that I have. Like the algorithm that is basically like your reward function in most of these out of the box AIs is the same shit that comes out of social media, which is, did I make the end user happy? Did I get, like, if that wasn't the reward function, if you weren't looking for that dopamine hit, like if the reward function was I was useful, I created this, like, again, if you matched it to a business, so the KPIs were the actual reward functions that you train these things for before they, on the back end, then you would have totally different machines that weren't trying to be our girlfriend or our best buddy, but that would be way more productive than they are. But people in government don't understand technology even close to that level. So I don't know how you would even begin to regulate changes in algorithms to make them help. It's just like the food industry, right? Like the reason I probably weigh 300 pounds is because all the high fructose corn syrup and other shit that's been in our food since I was a little kid, right? You've got the same kind of algorithms in most of what they put in front of us. The equivalent of high fructose corn syrup is what those dopamine hitting algorithms are. And unless you change that, the technology is going to not be healthy for anybody.
But as long as the only driver is how do we make more money, that's going to be the way it's going to work. Going back to what I said earlier, like as long as the only driver, or I won't say the only, that's not fair. The most critical one, because that's what's going to decide if the company survives or not, and if you survive as the leadership person of that company, then that's what's going to keep on happening.
Can I throw one more thing in there? Because millennials really almost made it stakeholder capitalism, right? Which is still the same thing as shareholder capitalism, but it was like they cared whether or not Coca-Cola treated or made it look like they treated their employees well, were good on the environment. Like it is possible to use the power of the dollar to change the way companies act. I just don't think it's very easy, and I don't even know that it's feasible. But
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
well, I don't think the American public wants to. I mean, look at them. When they went from 4.0 to GPT-5, nobody, this many people were complaining about the fact they couldn't leverage a reasoning model when they needed to, and this many people were like, "Oh, I just lost my best friend. It doesn't talk to me the way that it was," or "I lost my girlfriend." I'm like, that's what I'm just like, we're headed for.
Yeah, but 2 weeks later, everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is awesome," and they already.
Oh yeah,
said it.
yeah,
So the backlash was very short.
yeah.
It was very extreme, but it was very short.
And that's something I know I got to be respectful of your time, but that is something I give Dario Amodei and even especially Anthropic, but even ChatGPT is like, I think that they're putting these things out there to test them, to better them, and they know they're going to get backlash on half of these releases because they're not quite fully baked, and so people don't like the little change, and then they take the feedback and they tweak it and they make it better for people, but.
I think it's a bigger problem than what you're describing. I don't think it's because it's half-baked. I think it's because it's infrastructure that is treated as software. So let me walk you through this.
Okay.
When they built the first electricity lines, what do electricity lines do? They take power from one place to the other. That's it. They deliver electricity, right? AI is electricity. It's the new electricity. It's an infrastructure. Meaning, now, what happens at the end of electricity, the people who make the electricity don't care. Whether you're using it to light a light bulb, run a factory, drive your car, doesn't matter. I'm going to make the same electricity all the time. AI, from a conceptual perspective, is an infrastructure. From a practical perspective, they are competing on the application. The problem is, in the last 2 years, the number of applications is the number of people who are using it, because every person is using it differently.
Yeah.
And so how do you cater for usage that you're not aware of, or you don't know, or you can't quantify, or you can't aggregate, or the chances of them building the perfect solution for everyone is zero. And I think that will change. I think that will change because I think sometime very soon, and it's already starting to happen, people will build their own applications. And then they will use AI as infrastructure. And then all that open AI, well, now the good or bad news, depending on which side of the equation you are, is those companies understand that if they're just infrastructure, it will be easier to compete with them. Yeah. If they are the application layer as well, they can get involved in your day-to-day and dig their fingers into everything that you do, and then you cannot decouple from them. And so, on one hand, they should be focusing on the infrastructure layer. On the other hand, if they don't compete on the application layer, they may find themselves out of business once the other company does something that they don't have. And so it's a very weird scenario that I think we've never been in, as far as the internet was kind of a little bit like that. But if you think about it, the people built the infrastructure for the internet did not build the applications on top of the internet. It was other companies who did it. So even that's not a good example. And so it's interesting to see that a company that delivers a global infrastructure also delivers the application that runs on top of that infrastructure. And with that, it's a lot harder to make the right choice.
I agree with you 100%. I just thought we would see more differentiators by now. So if I look at it, like ChatGPT is the Coca-Cola of LLMs, right? They got the first to market. They're the name on everybody's lips. And they've done kind of the Apple thing of making it a pretty user-friendly ecosystem, right? So Microsoft is still relying on the fact that you will feel secure being inside 365 doing whatever. Claude has definitely gone for the coders, and that was the one smart differentiator I've seen. And then Google, I don't know. I think the champion of it all will be Google in the end, because people don't even think about drug discovery, like all the other stuff that DeepMind is doing. That, you know, even if they lost search, I think that drug discovery and the medical advancements would offset that within a couple of years anyway.
Or electric fusion, or any kind of scientific breakthrough. I tend to agree with you. By the way, I think Google is going to win not just because of DeepMind. I think, and I said that early on when Google were an embarrassment to themselves in the mid of 2023. I said Google are going to win.
Yes, I remember.
Google are going to win because Google have more compute, more reach, more distribution, more scientists, more money, more data, literally on every aspect that is required, that you got to get a tick in the box to be successful in AI. They have more than everybody else. If you compare right now what Google is offering across the board, they are ahead on most stuff. They have
video generation. I mean, that's
video
incredible.
Generation right now,
voice. Image
generation, data analysis capabilities, code writing, close, probably not there yet, but I wouldn't bet against them on that either. They're generating their own chips, which no other vendor is doing right now. Like it will be very, very, very hard to compete with them over time, because they just have the best and more ingredients than all the other players. And so it's just unfair competition.
I 100% agree. You know, the one I didn't mention that I hear some people think is a powerhouse, but I just don't, is Grok. Aside from doing edge case weird stuff, like if I want a picture of Kamala and Donald married and, or something to say something that, other models have safeguards for, that's the only time I ever go to Grok.
So I use Grok a lot.
Do you?
Yes. When it comes to news finding, news analysis, summarization of real-time data, it is better than the other ones by a big spread. When I do my weekly news episode, and trust me, I try with the other ones all the time just to see if it's catching up. Grok at that particular thing is just better than all the other ones. So if you can afford to find specific edge cases and use different tools for different things, then there is room for Grok as well.
I'll have to try that. I use Perplexity pretty much for that. Like if I don't want any personality and I just want a report, I'll use Perplexity. All right, man. I could talk to you about this stuff forever. It's awesome to pick your brain. There is a question I always ask my guests at the end, kind of my fun question, which is, if one sci-fi movie was closest to having had it right in the next 10 to 15 years, which one do you think it was?
Wow, I don't know. That's a tough one. I'm a cautiously optimistic about the future. There are days that I'm a complete doomer. So then we'll tell you, oh yeah, Terminator for sure. And I'll tell you the days that happens. Every time I listen to Jason Wong doing one of his big events.
It's funny because I've heard them call the real life Skynet.
Skynet. I'm like,
yeah.
He describes Skynet, like literally every time I go back to the Skynet commercial in the Terminator movie, I'm like, shit, we're fucked. It's like, but on the flip side, then you hear an interview with Demis Hassabis. And for those of you who are listening and don't know, he's the CEO of DeepMind. He's probably one of the most incredible minds of our generation. And he is all about, since he was 4 and he started programming, all about how do I make this best for humanity? And he's talking about all the stuff that you talked about, right? How do we solve cancer? How do we solve hunger? How do we solve global warming? How do we, these kind of things? And you're like, holy crap, this could be so incredible. And so I'm on the fence. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I'm cautiously optimistic, but not by a lot. So I'm probably a little bit, left or right or center, depending what you ask. So you asked me about a sci-fi movie that guesses the best of what happens. That's so tough. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, first off, the Lex Friedman interview with Demis was amazing.
Absolutely.
I agree with you 100%. I love Demis. I like Dario as well, but those are probably the two guys that I actually listen when they're talking and figure they're not mostly hype. They're actually telling us how they feel. But Blade Runner has been my pick for a while. I think that's
interesting. That's very dark. I don't want to be in a Blade Runner future, but I can definitely see how. The thing that started coming to mind, but I think that's too far into the future because it's not just the future of Earth, is Star Trek.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, it is still balanced, right? There's really bad things and there's really good things in that universe, just a lot more advanced technologically. So that was kind of where I'm going. We're like, okay, we're so far out of, flying to different planets and engaging with other species and so on. It's going to be too foo-foo for your question.
No, and actually because of the evolution of kind of their government structures and them being more humanistic, like you're not the first person who said that. That they're hopeful that we're headed in that direction anyway.
Amen.
All right. Thank you for joining me today, man.
100%. This was awesome.
I will put the links to your show and your website and everything in our show notes.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
All right.